If you were to say the words Jedi Arena to most Star Wars fans, it would likely invoke memories of the end of Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. This is in no small part due to the fact that at the end of Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones there is in fact an arena and it is indeed full of Jedi. However, unlike The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi Death Star battle, the previous two Star Wars games I played for the Atari 2600, Jedi Arena does not appear to be based on any particular battle within the Star Wars franchise. In fact, unlike Empire Strikes Back and the Return of the Jedi Death Star battle, which were both fairly clear in what they were graphically representing, while first playing Jedi Arena, I really had no idea what I was looking at or what I was supposed to be doing. And so not unlike a man who's been stuck trying to assemble an IKEA flat pack for the last 3 weeks must admit his defeat and turn to the instructions, I too was forced to redirect my attention to the game's manual. And indeed, having a look at the cover art of the cartridge, game box, and manual immediately starts to give you a clearer idea of what's going on. Firstly, it appears that the spherical object that floats around between the two players is a training remote, like the one from Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope and from Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens. In retrospect, this should probably have been immediately obvious, because I can't imagine any other spherical objects in the Star Wars universe known to shoot lasers. Looking at it again in the game, they definitely managed to nail the remote's movement, and I love the way that it just sort of shoots around the screen. Although I'm not entirely sure why they got the color and the shape wrong. Also, it's kind of strange that instead of shooting laser bolts like it does in the movie, it instead appears to shoot lightning. I can, however, quite happily forgive this slight inaccuracy, both because the lightning effect within the game looks absolutely fantastic, and also because using your little guy on the bottom of the screen to block the lightning with your lightsaber makes me feel like I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi once again in Attack of the Clones. But I've gotten a little bit off topic. What exactly is it that the manual tells us? Well, it begins with the opening paragraph that says, "Will you accept the challenge to become the Jedi Master?" Yes, I will. Find out if you, a Jedi Knight, are worthy of such a title. I most certainly am. Meet your opponent in the Jedi Arena where you're face to face in an electrifying laser battle. Well, actually, I think you will find it is in fact lightning, but let's move on. Use quick reflexes and swift lightsaber to score once, twice, 3 times. When you do, you are the Jedi Master. So essentially what they're saying is to win this game,
you must have Jedi reflexes.
Well, that is the objective, but it doesn't exactly instruct you in any real degree on what you actually have to do to play this game. And I really wouldn't blame you if you're watching the screen right now and wondering what the heck is going on. So this is probably a good point to explain the controls. Well, firstly, not unlike Action Force on the Atari 2600, the game can kind of be boiled down to defend and fire. And indeed, to either defend or fire, you're going to have to use the dial on your paddle controller. You see, moving the dial left will move the lightsaber of your little guy left, and of course, moving the dial right will move the lightsaber of your little guy right. You must utilize these controls to move your lightsaber to block any incoming lightning blast, which, if you miss, will hit your force shield down the bottom there, which will then take damage. In a somewhat similar fashion to the Death Star in Star Wars Return of the Jedi Death Star battle, the force field will actually take real damage and chunks of it will be removed each time it's hit. If the force field is hit too many times, it opens up, well, your character, I suppose, to being hit properly, although it's sort of more like a goalpost, and if that area is left unguarded and the lightning-spitting training remote manages to land a good shot, then your opponent is awarded a point. So really, when it comes to the defensive side of the game, the real objective is to protect your goalpost from any lightning, and helping you do so is 2 points of defense. Firstly, there's the force field, which is kind of like a goalie, and then secondly, there's your actual lightsaber, which is kind of like a guy standing 10 meters in front of your goalie with a lightsaber, cutting down anyone who comes to try to score a goal. And so that's the defensive side of the game explained, so let's get on to the offensive side, where it gets a little bit more tricky and a little bit more complicated. You see, because the Atari 2600 paddle controller only has one dial on it, and so therefore to attack you're using the exact same dial that you're using to defend. When you press the red button on your paddle controller, the training remote sends a bolt of lightning towards your enemy in whatever direction you've got the dial pointing, although often that means to aim at your enemy, and especially if you're trying to bore your way through part of the enemy's shield, you're going to have to turn your lightsaber away, opening up your defenses in order to launch an attack. And so therefore, since you don't actually control the movement of the training remote yourself, and because both you and your opponent share to launch attacks, and especially because it's the same dial controlling your defensive and offensive capabilities, this game really does become an adrenaline-filled cat and mouse game, especially when you're playing it on the harder setting. When I first started playing this game, I thought that the shared controls for the defensive lightsaber and the offensive lightning bolts were sort of weird and I wasn't really that into it. Although now that I've played the game a fair bit and got used to it, I think it's probably actually the main highlight of the game. It leads to a lot of careful tactics and planning, is something I've not seen in any game before, and really sets this game apart from any other that I've played. Also, as you're playing the game, a sort of white noise builds up in the background, and when it gets to a very loud, almost storm-like rumble, it releases lightning in all crazy directions. This is quite hard to defend against, and if you have got holes in your force field, it can be pretty darn deadly. And so really that's the important part of the game review just now. The actual gameplay part of it and the controls are both really well done and extremely enjoyable, and for that alone I could definitely recommend this game. However, that said, it does have some negatives that I will get into now. Well, first and foremost, my main and I guess only complaint is really the graphics. The graphics are not good. They're not terrible, but they're definitely not Star Wars. As I bellyached about earlier, they didn't even try to make the training remote look like a training remote, and that would have been a really easy thing to do. If you once again consider the other two Star Wars games, Return of the Jedi Death Star Battle and The Empire Strikes Back, they really put in a lot of care and love to make it resemble the scenes in the movie. However, if you're looking at the screen right now, there's really nothing in the game aside from a red stick and a blue stick that really screams Star Wars. And even in their case, your characters don't look like guys holding lightsabers, but kind of just someone wiggling a stick. When I was told that the game I would be reviewing this Star Wars month on the Atari 2600 would be called Jedi Arena, my initial thoughts were, how are they possibly going to do lightsaber combat on the Atari? And I guess the answer is that they really didn't know. It definitely feels like this game was turned into Star Wars as a bit of an afterthought. In fact, if you turn the game on its side, it starts to look like an entirely different encounter. And actually, come to think of it, in the manual, it mistakenly refers to the training remote as a seeker, which sounds suspiciously like Quidditch terminology to me. Although I guess that lightning was never a factor in Quidditch. Oh wait. And so with all of this taken into account, I guess while the game's not a very good Star Wars game, it's definitely a very good Harry Potter game. And so if you're looking for a fun Harry Potter game to play this Star Wars month, then head down to your local video store and pick up a copy of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire Graveyard Dark Lord Encounter for the Atari 2600. I can't believe a game that combines Star Wars and Harry Potter had absolutely no John Williams in it. What a bummer.